All right, guys, welcome to the other side of the coin. It's been a while since we've done an episode with guests. Last time it was a while back. I think it was Dami, but I'm back. I'm back, and I've got two fantastic intellects, and I'm so glad I've got these guys. I thoroughly enjoy spending great quality discussions with them in football Twitter. So first of all, I want to introduce my man. I've known him for a very long time now, in fact, and his name is Sono. And just enjoy the type of quality his discussions is in football Twitter, and he talks with a lot of respect. So first of all, Sono, thank you for coming to the other side of the coin. How you doing?
I'm fine, Mr. Mees. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor. When you invited me to this platform, I had absolutely no excuse. Even if I had an excuse, I would definitely let it forfeit any excuse I had, definitely, to share this great opportunity with you. So thank you for having me. I was grateful.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, man. I truly appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I can't wait to start a conversation with you. Secondly, this man, I've only got to know him probably a month, couple of months, probably
Yes,
max, but I simply enjoy the takes he has on all things Chelsea and also footballing matters in general. And he's once again another lovely person, just simply respectful in the timeline. Sometimes adds a little bit of humor as well, which is fantastic, which we need. My man Kunal, thank you for
yes, yes.
joining the other side of the coin. How are you, my
Always a
man?
pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Right now it's 2 a.m. and the only guy I would like to talk right now about Chelsea would be Miz. He is the only guy that would keep me up.
Absolutely.
And obviously, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Apart from the results, I should say, yeah, everything has been going great. And hopefully, Lampard can help a little bit more in that regard, in a couple of days.
Absolutely. Can I look, man? I truly appreciate you taking the time out and such an odd time as well, 2 a.m. But yeah, truly appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
So, all right, guys, let's get this ball rolling. We've got
Splendid.
quite a few things that we want to talk about, and I really want to get your takes on it. And it's particular topics that's kind of sort of bothering me in recent times. I want to try and get to a level ground on these topics with you guys. So, first of all, there's a notion that's going around at the moment that our attack will fix our defense. I see so many people talk about this. Every time I talk about our defense is just comical. We seem to make errors every single game, and critical errors as well. We can't seem to be getting away with these sort of things. Even against the match against Man United, the first goal where Rudiger seems to come out and he leaves Andres Christensen open when there was no need for him to come out. Second goal as well, Harry Maguire, easy header. There seems to be no defensive structure. Even against Leicester, as we all know,
Yeah.
there was issues against Leicester as well. How sometimes it just looked so comical, but a lot of people tend to think that all of this is happening because we're not scoring goals, and then, I can't seem to put two things together. Like I can understand that
Yeah.
yes, had we scored more goals, it just keeps us gives us a lot more confidence, and perhaps that confidence then turns into better defending. But I want to touch base firstly with Sono in regards to this. Now, you might have seen this comment float around with many people out there in football Twitter specifically.
Yeah.
What's your take on this particular matter? You know, take away the bias, take away all sorts of anger that we have at the moment in certain performances. What's your thoughts around this particular notion that if we score or take our opportunities, our defense will get better?
I think it is important, if not imperative, to let the stats do the talking. Statistically, the stats this season suggest that we are actually fourth in the goals table. So we have Man City first, I think 67, Liverpool 61, Leicester 54, and Chelsea 43. So we're not totally in a state of disaster when it comes to the offensive phase. Because if you're fourth on the table, it means there are about 20 teams in a league, and you're fourth. So we are. So I don't think people are actually looking at the stats. Yes, we're actually not taking the chances we ought to have taken. We ought to take, especially considering the game. If you put the Man United game into consideration, you would see that not taking our chances does play huge significance in on the results.
Mm.
However, this is where the subject or the main factors contributing to our downfall this season has been undermined. Goals conceded, we've conceded 36 goals. We're 11th on the table.
Mm.
Now, I was looking at Sheffield United. Sheffield United haven't has scored 28 goals,
Mm.
but yet
Good point.
conceded 20. Yeah, they are probably, I think they're second on the table of
Mm.
goals conceded. Like they're second clean sheets.
Yeah.
They've conceded less goals, 24. So this is a
Mm.
team that can't score, yet
Mm.
they are
Mm.
doing well defensively. So where is the balance? So I would say that the notion that attack would fix defense is not entirely true, and
Mm.
Sheffield United is a classic example. You take Watford as sorry, forgive me. If you take Wolf,
Mm.
Wolf scored 36 less goals than we have, and
Mm.
yet I think they've conceded 32. That's 4 goals less than we have.
Yeah.
I'm saying you can't always base or rely on the attack to score you goals. Liverpool this season haven't always scored plenty goals in the game.
Yeah.
Sometimes they win game by 1 goal, sometimes by 2 goals to 1.
Mm. Mm.
And if you look at against goals, I think it defeats if you look at the beginning of our season, it defeats the point that attack will fix defense, because I believe we scored 2 goals against Bournemouth, right?
Yeah.
Against
Yeah.
Norwich, if I'm not mistaken,
Norwich.
against
Yeah.
Norwich, and see how we blew that. It's
Sheffield. I think it was against Sheffield. We scored two, and then they scored back two.
yeah, forgive me. And also, yeah, and we scored 1 goal against Norwich, I believe, and they equalized to 1-1. That's the first set. Because yeah, we were
I
winning
think we
one
won 3-2 against Norwich. Yeah.
Yeah, we won 3-2 against Norwich.
three
Yeah.
two
Yeah, yeah, we
It was a 2 to
ended up.
draw against Sheffield United.
to
Yeah,
to
yeah.
to draw against Sheffield
I
United.
think you're
Forgive my
talking
fact.
about Brighton. Brighton, where we were winning 1-0, and then
Brighton,
they
yeah.
Splendid,
equalised to one.
Jahan
splendid.
Buck scored that screamer. Yeah, I remember.
Splendid,
Yeah,
splendid, splendid. It's been so much ups and downs this season. You can't even keep up
Chelsea
anymore with
fans,
the
man,
stats.
can't blame us.
Absolutely,
Can't blame us.
it's that bad. So what? In a nutshell, attack wouldn't always fix defense. You
yeah,
defend the coach have to have a well drilled defense to actually save himself a point or 3 points in a game. Yeah.
no, good point, Sona. That's how I've been feeling as well. I don't necessarily look. Definitely, have we scored or taken our chances? It does help the defense, makes them a bit more confidence. But now to Kunal, what do you think? Why are certain fans sort of want to believe this? Like, I feel like they're forcing themselves to believe this. It feels like they look at Frank Lampard and they see that he's a legend. He's come back to our
Yeah.
club as a manager, but they can't seem to put the two aside. They've got the player and they seem to sort of join that with the manager, and I feel like that is one of the reasons. Personally, I feel that they want to look at this particular scenario, that had we scored more goals, then the defense gets better. Frank kind of has been sort of implying that as well. So what's your take? Like, why have fans been thinking like this, Kunal, this season, particularly about if we score goals, then defense gets better?
I think, in all honesty, this is one of the more, no offense, but one of the more outlandish theories that have been going around. I know I can put myself into that place as a Chelsea fan. You look at Frank Lampard, and to be very honest, even if we were, getting plummeted 10 goals a game, I really would feel bad, I'm going after him being a Chelsea legend and all that. But having said that, an attack will automatically somehow, good attack, potent attack will somehow definitely fix the defense in itself. That's just not the case for me. If you run a company, suppose, right, and you got all these guys, you hired them, and due to one reason or the other, another, the company is, not doing that well. You guys are crashing. So you go to the accounting department. They said, I don't think so. Salesperson are not doing their job. So why should I? Or they not being good enough is putting pressure on me and letting me not do my things correctly. So I don't think that's the case at all. And you can put it the other way as well. A potent enough defense should then be able to make up for the lack of attack.
Mhm. Yeah, very good
Atletico
point.
Madrid
Yeah,
can do that. They can give that same reason. Only if we can defend with all our might, with all our strength. We only need to score one or two chances a game, and our defense will take care of the rest. That is just throwing blame from one sector to the other. Attackers are there to do a particular job. Defense, it's a collective game. Football is an 11 people game. Three guys, the front three of Mohamed Salah, Mane, and Firmino. Without Van Dijk, I don't think they'd be in such a great position. In fact, I'm sure about that. So good attack makes a good defense. It's just outlandish, if not borderline naive. If Lampard is putting that himself out, and I've seen it in certain interviews. He's really focusing on we should have put those chances away. We should have put those chances away.
yeah.
Rarely do we see that that was a bad tackle, that was an unnecessary tackle, that was a little bit of a what we call a brain fart from
Mm.
the defender's point of view. We don't talk about that so much, and people are jumping on that bandwagon. I myself can see that Lampard, you don't want to, once again, the name itself brings pride in me, and all those things he has done for me growing up. I think people need to look at call a spade is what I want to say. Don't look for outlandish stories just to make up for the lack of defensive astuteness that Lampard needs to improve upon. We should not go out searching reach out for these reasons. I think attackers are there to attack, defense is there to defend, and both these departments, these guys need to step up is all I feel.
Perfectly well put, Kunal. I think, it's so true. I've seen so many press conferences where I think maybe a couple of them where Frank has said, yeah, defensively we fell asleep, but generally he comes out and he talks about,
Yeah, we
we've
should have
not
scored.
capitalized on. Yeah, we should have scored. We should have scored. Yeah, I get it. We should have scored, but hey, what happened to the 2 goals that we just conceded? Like, we're not going to talk about that at all. It's a very good point, and it kind of now leads us to the next topic, which we want to talk about, is the defensive frailties, right? As Kunal, you've said so nicely, defense should do their defensive job, attack should do their attacking job, and collectively it comes together and becomes a total game. So, Sono, what I want to ask you is, we've played, I don't know, 25, 26 games, I think, 26 games so far in the Premier League. We've also played some games in 27 games. And we've also played, obviously, quite a few games in the Champions League. Some we've played in the FA Cup, the League Cup, and whatnot. So, Sono, what I want to ask you, Sono, is that we've now seen quite a bit of this season. Good sample size. From game 1 to game now, there hasn't been enough clean sheets. I miss the good old Chelsea days where, we pride ourselves with clean sheets. We were defensively rock solid. Teams would come to Stamford Bridge and they would be scared. Now they come to Stamford Bridge and they look at 3 points in the bag. They just cannot wait to take the 3 points home. What's your take on this particular current team not being able to solidify the defensive position, as opposed to last season? I'm not comparing managers here. I'm just saying, it's not like we've changed too much personnel in the backline. Yes, David Luiz has gone, but we still have the likes of Rudiger and Andres Christensen. Zuma is a solid defender as well. Tomori, who's become a very, very exciting name as well. What seems to be the issue in terms of defense? That we keep, leaking so many silly goals. What's your take on that?
It's simple. We lack a screener.
Mm.
If you haven't got, look through the history of football. I fell in love with football in 1990, watching Cameroon, and I know I look younger than it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Watching Cameroon and England. I think Makanaki, Oman Big, David Platt.
Oof.
Those guys
Yeah,
really
yeah.
made me fall in love with football. And I watched Maradona 1994. He got on my nerve because scoring that goal against Nigeria, causing the goal against Nigeria when we went up 2-1. And all through if you look, there is something very obvious and very conspicuous in football.
Mm.
Every champion seems to have a good screener, and when I say screener, I mean someone shielding the back line. Less for those who are still for those who are very young and in like very much more um, um, in tune with modern football. I'll bring it
Mm.
to an early to more recent times.
Yeah.
Arsenal. If people forget, Arsenal had Gilberto Silva. They had
Oh, yeah.
Vieira. Man
Mm.
United. Man United had a lot. They had Darren Fletcher. They had
Mm. Michael
they had
Carrick.
Michael Carrick.
Yeah.
Liverpool at one point had Mascherano and Alonso.
Mm.
Chelsea, come on, we were made for it. We had Makelele, we had
Marcus.
Mikel. At one point, we even had Essien helping when Mikel was out. And
Mm.
remember, we had Lassana Diarra as well, who could come
Yes.
in and cover that role as well.
Yes.
When Real Madrid sold Makelele, guess what happened? They struggled. Guess
Mm.
what happened? They bought in Mamadou Diarra, if you remember.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
what happened when Mamadou Diarra left? They brought in Kedira.
Yes.
Remember,
Yeah.
Arsenal were doing fine with Alex Song at one
Mm.
point.
Mm.
Remember, and that was when Barcelona bought Alex Song. Now
Yeah.
we were struggling. We were struggling when we lost Makelele and Essien. Guess what we did? We bought Matic.
Mm.
Now
Yeah.
Liverpool people do not, and with Kante and Matic, and people do not really understand the importance of a screener in the sitting on your DM. Now Jorginho is good, but he's not a shield. He cannot shield the defense.
Gets
So
outrun. Yeah.
it's so easy to. I wouldn't. I think it will be rude to call him a lightweight, but
Mm.
it's not. You don't expect him to shield a defense for you, and when you do not have a player like John Terry to back up orders to who understand positioning, there is a tendency of your defense being porous,
Mm.
and this
Mm.
is the one area we lack. Now, I mentioned the importance of having a shield in the defense. I could tell you, do you know why? Even Man City right now, if you realize it, ever since Man City lost, Man City were doing fine a bit when they lost company until
Mm.
they until they sent Fernandinho to play in the centre back, and
Centre back.
Yeah.
Fernandinho was the shield, so they lost the shield, and you see they struggled for a period
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
they lost the shield. You see how important the back that shield is to a player, to any team. If you look at
Mm.
AC Milan had Gattuso. It was when
Mm.
you have to go through Gattuso to get to go through the to defense. Uh, um, I think Inter Milan. I can't recall who Inter Milan had Cambiaso.
Can
And
be
I'm saying
also. Yeah. Yeah.
you can imagine the Juventus. Juventus had Vidal. People thought without Vidal and without Vidal gave Pelo the license, the freedom to do his magic, and
Mm.
because of that, even Pogba had the ability and the license to go forward and score goals, and that's the problem Pogba was having in Man United, because
Mm.
at Man United, Pogba had the instinct to go forward, but when you do not have the leadership of Pelo and the cover of Vidal to
Mm.
screen the back when you're gone becomes a problem. It is very important to have a shield through the history of football. People people think Barcelona just had Nesta and Xavi. Barcelona had Busquets, who does the dirty
Yeah.
job. People do not really realize how much Busquets
Unsung
does in
hero.
that team. Yeah, remember Barcelona had Keita as well, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yaya Toure. How important, and that was the reason Barcelona got Alex Song as well to do those
Mm.
dirty
Yeah.
job in the midfield. So you can understand how important it is to have a player, a shield, not just how do you call it, not just a register. You can have a
Register.
register all day one, but if you haven't got a shield, a proper shield, look at what Ndidi does now for Leicester. You can see how
Oh,
important it is.
so
Yeah,
important. Yeah.
absolutely. So that's what Chelsea lack. It's all good having to start the ball from the back, but you also
Mm.
need to realize that you are susceptible to counter at one point. And also, when you're playing against a good team that plays on the pace, that plays with pace, you need a shield to play. Now,
Mm.
secondly, I think I highlighted another thing. The most important thing I'm realizing that's very conspicuous with Lampard's system is the unstable partnership. Now,
Mm.
if you look through the history on football, you would understand that constant changes of defensive partnership would lead to an incohesive unit, and that's a recipe for disaster. I'll give
Yeah.
you an example. I'm going to list you these names. Tell me this. Do you know how the partnership Chelsea had in the past? I think Frank Leboeuf and Masoud Desai, if I'm not
Mm. Mm.
mistaken.
Mm.
John Terry had Carvalho. John
Yeah.
Terry had Cahill. Even
Cahill.
David Lewis, when John Terry was gone, Lewis had Cahill. There was a
Yeah.
telepathic understanding before them. Now remember Arsenal. Arsenal had Campbell and Martin Keown as well.
Mm. Mm.
Now Man United had Johnson and Stam, Yap Stamp.
Yep.
And then you had Ferdinand and Vidic.
Vidic. Yeah. Yeah.
Liverpool had Hippier and Carragher. Um,
Yes.
um, Bayern Leverkusen, even Bayern Leverkusen had Lucio and Zikovic.
Yes. Yes.
Real Madrid had Pepe and Ramos.
Yes.
AC Milan had Nesta and Stam when it was there.
Yes. Yeah.
Barcelona had Puyol and Piqué.
Okay. Yeah.
Juventus, Inter Milan had Lucio and Materazzi. Juventus
Yes.
had. Now we know the most
Chiellini.
recent.
Yeah.
I was about to say that we know the most recent devastating
Berlucci
partnership.
and Chiellini.
Lucian
Yeah.
Chiellini. You can see
Yeah.
how important it is to have a stable partnership, and it pains me that Lampard doesn't recognize how important it is. So the chop and
Mm.
change as had a huge bearing on the defensive unit, and it makes them feels like aliens trying to become friends and trying to in the best interest of a goal, which may never serve a purpose because they're not there's a lack of understanding,
Mm.
a lack of awareness between themselves
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, absolutely, it is important. And one last thing, I see a conspicuous lack of quality coaching
Mm.
resulting to repetitive errors. You can see the team just there is a repetitive errors among the players
Mm.
individually and not just as a team, but individually. It seems there is a lack of sense of positioning in the team, and which is very deadly. And most importantly, something that has never been highlighted is the there is a disjointed uh, um, connection. I would say there's a disconnect between the wingers, between the fullback and the winger. If you remember Maluda and Ashley Cole,
Yeah.
how they if you remember, I'm not sure who was playing on the wing, but Ivanovic run.
Yeah.
You can see, if you remember Evra and Giggs,
Gigs. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Gary Neville and Ronaldo, if you see the understanding between them, and it is
Yeah.
very important. So you know when to cover, you know when to come, you know when to move into the field to let your fullback run into. So your fullback, there is an understanding
It's a
between
connection.
the
It's a very good
winger.
point.
There's a
Yeah.
connection, and I feel that this is what's lacking, and that's down to the coaching. I think our defensive
Yeah.
frailties has so
Mm.
far been down to the coach and the managerial decisions, basically. Yeah.
Now, very, very well said. Before I go to Kunal and his point of view, I think you've nailed it. You've touched the points of a defensive shield. I think and this is a bit of a soft topic, and people get very, very upset when we talk about Jorginho. For me, Jorginho is a fantastic player. He's got the vision, he's got the touch. He's a great leader as well at times. He G's up the crowd and he picks up the teammates. But for me, I don't think we have all the ingredients to get the best out of him. And right now, this team, as you said, needs a defensive shield, needs a defensive, the likes of all the players that you've mentioned previously that we've had, Matic, Essien, Makalele. Those guys were not bad on the ball. They were pretty good on the ball as well. Probably not as great as Jorginho, of course, but what they also had was they were destroyers. They knew how to go back. They knew how to help the defense out, and they knew how to keep the structure. And we've seen so many times this season where, whenever there's a counter, Jorginho can't even seem to keep up with the referee. Referee is going before Jorginho.
Yeah.
So, and the other points that you talked about is a defensive leader, having centre backs, the likes of all those centre backs that you've talked about in the history of our game. We don't seem to have that. But how can we have that? Which is touching on your next point, which is, you need to give consistency. You need to believe on a particular combination of centre backs so you can build the next phase of the combination. For me, it was Zuma and Tomori. A lot of people say maybe we should give Tomori and Andres Christiansen. Whatever the case is, two need to be consistent on a regular basis to start. And lastly, which I thoroughly enjoyed what you've said, Sono, is the connection between the fullbacks and the wings. And once again, we've seen different combinations of fullbacks, different combinations of wings, and we just can't seem to create that chemistry. So what I want to ask you, Kunal, is why do you think the points that we've just mentioned, specifically touching on the training perspective, on the case that we've seen recurring types of goals that's been happening against our defense, from set pieces, crosses coming in, the classic case, the one against Man United where Martial scores, John Terry even calls it out. It's unacceptable. You've got 5 or 6 Chelsea players, 2 Man United players, and the one Man United player in the box ends up getting the header. He was saying that it's just unacceptable, that type of defending, when you've got that many bodies to sort of help out. What's your thoughts on the training aspect, the aspect of consistency? Talk about the injuries that might have played as well, and give us some sort of views in regards to, there's been a lot of talk about people saying, Frank had these similar problems in Derby as well, in regards to defensive frailties. So, I've not watched too much of Derby. Just don't get enough time to watch so many games. So what's your thoughts on this whole matter of defensive frailties?
I think when it comes to the subject of defensive frailties, to be very honest, Lampard hasn't helped his case either. Obviously the constant chopping and changing, the point I raised a couple of days back as well, constant chopping and changes, you never give that true run of games to any center back, and the confidence obviously gets shattered. I know the recent results haven't helped his case as well. He has been, somewhat forced into making these types of changes. But, another point is that it's not even quantifiable. I don't know. When you think of a Chelsea or a classic Chelsea team, you remember these no nonsense kind of center backs. You felt, I don't want to, the word would be manly or whatever, I don't know, but now we have these technical guys who are good on the ball, but there's not something Chelsea about it. I've been seeing not for as long as you guys have been barely watching for about 13 or 14 years or something. But even in that time frame, I can associate Chelsea defenders from being, even our fullbacks, Ivanovic and even Espilicueta to this day. These are not Chelsea guys that we have, and another reason. So Lampard hasn't given too much time for two guys to gel together. However, injuries have also played a pretty important part. Those wingers, and this is where I think these people do not get talked about that often. What is the medical staff doing for the past few years? I mean, even if we have a slight knock and you see Lampard in the next day post-match conference, I think that the guy had a knock. I think he'll be out for a couple of days, and I'm like, come on, Frank. I've seen it for a few years. If it's in January, the guy is gone for the season. Sorry,
Mm, mm,
this is how the medical staff goes at Chelsea. And
yeah.
these guys are always going under the carpet. No one talks about it that much. And Chelsea have a history of not so good relationships with the medical staff. So I don't
Mm,
know what's going on in that regard as well. We cannot just seem to get people fit in the specific time frame, which is appreciable enough.
Pulisic being one of
So
them, where
yeah, I was
uh,
like, he's gonna too. It's like I was just saying, such a shame. He was looking so well. Now he'll be out for a couple of days. Couple of days. I don't think At most, he has another few weeks to go. Ruben
yeah,
Loftus-Cheek, you cannot imagine guys like Mohamed Salah and the rest of the Liverpool front line getting injured, and then they had to play likes of Origi.
mm,
They're not going to go anywhere in that regard. You know, so they are able to even get their main guys going about. They have them fresh and all that, those sort of things. With so much technology, I don't see why a world class setup that Chelsea can provide, you just cannot seem to get the guys fit. With that comes the defensive, combination is all ruined most of the times. And another reason is that I think fullbacks don't help their case either. Defense is a back four job.
yeah,
Fullbacks, Aspilicueta, I'm just sorry about. He's been a lovely servant. I think we can all agree upon that fact. He's been a
mm,
brilliant servant to the club, but when I see him, it's not the same anymore. I think that he's gonna get overrun. I'm feeling like, oh no, that's gonna be a nutmeg. And I never felt this for the past 6 7 years. Obviously, left back situation, it's shambolic. I think that we are a team
yeah,
like Chelsea has been put in such a place that Aspilicueta has been shifted to that side when we already have two supposed starting left backs, supposed alleged starting left backs, and Aspilicueta has been shifted to that side. I know because you have to play Rhys James as well, but doesn't mean that proper left back cannot be employed in their original space if they are good enough.
yeah,
So fullbacks, they're not helping. So defense obviously is suffering from in that regard. Kepa, I think he has to take the blame as well. Lampard, of course, has not put the strongest team, I think, tactically enough. But even the shots that we were supposed to save, Kepa for me, he was never the shot saving monster even at his days at Athletic Bilbao. He was known for his ball playing skills, and even that doesn't seem to be his strongest suit whenever I see him these days. So I mean, he's just become just another Caballero, younger Caballero these days. He's just a younger Caballero with some nice hair, I must confess, yeah. So Kepa, even the shots
Yeah.
that he was supposed to save, I just don't think that fullbacks, we need to replace both of them. Aspilicueta in the long run, we definitely need to find a new left back. The keeper situation, I know we paid a lot of money for him, but for me, a game of a 30 game season is a good enough sample size to judge a player. And I get
mm,
blamed for it to, by various accounts that I judge Kepa too harshly. I don't judge Kepa harshly. I'm being factual, I saw a stat that being the 127th best goalkeeper out of a sample size of 150 goalkeepers around the world, and you're playing for a club like Chelsea, and we paid 80 million, which is around 80 million euros, which is not your fault, but still you should be held accountable for at least the performances that you are at your optimum able to give. And we haven't seen
mm.
that optimum level for about 6 to 7 months now at the start of the season since.
I was
Kepa is yeah.
I
So
was
these factors accumulatively, I think Lampard being not tactically aware enough, the fullbacks they are either not good enough or are getting too old, and Kappa is just a bad string of form. I hope that, but I think 30 games a season is good enough to say that maybe he's not up for it. Yeah.
So no, you were going to say
yeah,
something.
Quinn, I was wondering, I was hoping I could ask you, in your opinion, is the difference between Kepa of last season and the Kepa of this season?
I think we had a very settled centre back pairing as well. The goalkeeper certainly feels very confident when he knows the guy. He knows what their mindset is. He knows the pass that Luiz is looking to play. And we also had Rudiger for the rest of the season, in the last season for the most part. So obviously, when you Kepa for me is a confident player, and it's good to have a confident confidence sort of player, but when they're going through at a bad patch of form, the world seems to be against you. And Kepa, for the last season, has a settled team in front of him. Aspilicueta was 1 year younger, and he also made mistakes against Man City and other teams as well in the last season. He misplaced a couple of passes. The confidence seems to have been shattered. The Chelsea fans haven't helped, but he hasn't helped us fans either. For me, the Kepa, he's never going to get taller. He's a 5'10" guy for a goalkeeper. So I think he's just short on confidence. But when you're short of confidence for 20 games running, I just think you are a player with DNA that which is of not being a confident player in the first place. Elite players, they get out of that patch. Kepa seems to be getting stuck further and further, and I don't think how it's going to work out.
I was wondering, Maze, thank you. That's a great point, Kuna, you've made there. Absolutely. I think it's giving me a food for thought. Maze, if you put into account, take into cognizance David De Gea's experience in his first 3 seasons, would you say you could take that precedent and have some hope, a bit of hope, that Kepa could come good again?
Honestly, guys, I completely understand what you've said, Kunal, as well, in regards to Kepa. Look, stats, and this season, we cannot deny the fact that he has been a bit dodgy at certain times. But for me, it's what Kunal, you've said as well, and what you've said as well, Sono. I don't think, had we had a solid centre-back pairing, I don't think this would be an issue. You look at our last... Yeah, you look at our last 2 games, boys, without Kepa, with Willy Caballero. We've let in 2 goals against Leicester. We've let in 2 goals against Man United. Are these Kepa's fault now? Kepa hasn't even started. So, we cannot solely blame everything on Kepa. And this is why I'm saying that this season, there's, an absolute... We can clearly see there's issues defensively. We are tactically, and this is where I blame Frank, that a lot of people don't tend to want to say this, but I feel like he hasn't got the defensive tactics correct. I don't think he has nailed that down. Whether he has the expertise in his backroom staff, that's another question. You've got ex-players, like John Terry and many other people, they comment on some of our defensive tactics, and they sometimes get bemused that, this is childish, some of these things that are happening. Even under Sarri last season, we've been hammered few games like Man City 6, Bournemouth 4, but we still conceded only, I think, 39 goals for the whole season. There was a lot of...
That's right.
Yeah, there was a lot more clean sheets. We looked a lot more, defensively solid, because I felt like there was an ideology when it came to defending. You look at under contact, there was an ideology of how to defend. I don't see us having an ideology of how to defend. We, as you said, Sono, we keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again in defense. Set pieces. Yeah. Tell me how many of you guys are confident when there's an opposition set piece coming in. I'm never confident. I'm like, oh my God, like I don't know what's about to happen here. But you look at our time in the yesteryears when we had Ricardo Carvalho and John Terry, some of the other guys that you guys have mentioned as well, Cahill. We were always confident, like, this is not going to be a goal. You can take as many corners as you want. You can take as many free kicks as you want. These guys have the back line sorted. They're defensive leaders. They know exactly how to move. So, and obviously, we had an unbelievable stopper in the likes of Peter Cech. So, I don't think so. Going back to your point, Sono, what you were saying about Kepa, for me, he's not the ultimate issue. He's just now being made a scapegoat of this whole fiasco, I suppose. I'm not saying he's blameless. He definitely has some blame this season. He could do a lot better in his defensive, box. When the crosses come in, he can come out and jump and grab it. He's got hands. You can do that. He can be a lot more aggressive in corners. He can be a lot more aggressive in many different things, which I don't think he always is. But if you look at all the goals we've considered about 36 goals so far this season.
Yeah.
I would suggest have a look at each one of these goals, and to all the viewers out there, have a look at each one of these goals and tell me how many of them are actually the keeper's fault. How many of them are keeper's fault, and how many of them were actually a collective defensive unit's fault, starting all the way from the forward and through the defense area, through the midfield area, and into the defense. So, some really interesting points. I think how I want to end this particular segment is that, and it kind of ties into the next topic that I want to talk about, which is expectation for next season. I've tweeted recently, guys, that this season is all about excuses. I feel like people have all the excuses ready. It's just coming out of their pockets. Every excuse is ready. Some excuses I feel are acceptable, and some I feel are questionable. I don't think, like for instance, this defensive thing. So next season, we already know Ziyech is in, so he's going to help us out a lot in terms of creating up front and scoring as well, hopefully. If we don't upgrade in our centre backs and we keep the four that we already have, and if we don't end up upgrading in our in our fullbacks and we keep the ones we already have, and that goes with our midfield as well, I fail to see how all of a sudden we become a defensive stronghold next season. From this season, we materialize and we become a defensive stronghold. So what I want to ask, and I'll start with Sono, is that what's your expectation of next season? Can you accept these sort of comical defending next season? Can you accept if we, don't take our chances up front? Can you accept mediocrity and these type of excuses that everyone's talking about? I look at Chelsea and I think we are a club that should be fighting for titles. We should be, up there with the top clubs in Europe. What's your take? What's your perspective on next season with the kind of game that we're playing right now?
Well, you only need to look not too far back ago. You only need to look at Arsenal Football Club under Wenger to realize that you could get Sanchez, you could get Ozil, you could get Aubameyang. You could score 4 goals. You could score good 4 goals in the game and still end up conceding another 4.
Even Lacazette,
absolutely. If you remember, what's his name? The late Ivorian who scored the last goal against Arsenal when it was 4-0. Remember when Arsenal was beating? Arsenal. They were beating Newcastle by 4 goals to 0. And that goal gave me a shield in my spine. And they came back. And guess what happened? Do you recall Arsenal against Anderlecht? You remember that game? And that was about 4 games after the Newcastle game. Arsenal was beating Anderlecht 3 goals to nothing, and Anderlecht came from behind to score to 3-0. You can have all the you can score all the goals in the world. If you cannot defend, you are likely to throw away those goals. Ask a question. One very important question. What was the last score between Norwich and Liverpool?
1-0.
Liverpool had Salah, they had Firmino, and they had Mane. 3 deadly musketeer, and they could only get 1 goal. Now imagine if they could not defend. What's going to happen?
Oh, yeah.
So you could have, at the moment right now, we could say Salah is way above Ziyech in the pecking order, right? At the moment right now, we could say Mane is above Ziyech. At the moment right now, we could say Firmino is above, at least is a top striker, we could say. But yet, against Norwich, you would expect them to thrash Norwich. but
Yeah.
they couldn't. The game only finished by a goal. They could only get a goal. And tell you what,
Mm,
that tells you that Ziyech may not be the solution, may not be our savior. If
mm,
Salah, Firmino, and Mane can't put 3 goals past Norwich, you're not guaranteed that Ziyech would come and improve our goal stat automatically, and then without us having a solid defense. So the main focus is for us to focus on the defensive phase and then
mm,
build forward, because you may not win by not score if you don't score, but you would
mm.
surely not lose if you don't concede.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes
True.
a point is the fine line between I was reading do you know when Man City Man City won the title, I think it was they were Man United and Man City were tied on a point. It was
Yeah.
a goal
Goal
difference.
Goal
difference. Yeah.
differences. Yeah.
Goal
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
You know what a point could do for a team.
Mm,
Sure. Yeah.
When we beat Wigan 8-0. Remember when we played Liverpool,
Yeah.
we were just a point ahead of Man United,
mm,
and we
mm,
had to win that game against Liverpool.
mm,
So you can imagine how important a point could be in a
mm.
game. So people underestimate the importance of trying to see out a goal or draw, but it can play a very important role in a long steer. So if we can talk all day long about Ziyech, about Sancho, but if we
Mm.
do not sort out the defense, if we do not sort out the defensive cohesive unit and a shield, we're just going to be another Arsenal, a more kind of a modern version of Arsenal. That's all we're going to be. Yeah.
No, it's so well put, man. And this is what I want to sort of hear from Kunal as well. That next season it seems like we are in this false sort of security where we're gonna get ourselves a really good striker, backup striker. We're gonna get ourselves, really strong, exciting left back. We're gonna get Ziyech. We're gonna get a creative midfielder, and we're gonna score 10 goals every game. We're gonna score 20 goals every game. But there's been like zero talks about defense. No one seems to. They think we are just going to outscore our opposition every
Yeah.
single game. It
Yeah.
doesn't work. As Sono said,
Yeah.
there are going to be games where against Norwich or against Sheffield or against when the later matches that happen in the
Yeah.
season, you got teams that are in the relegation battle,
Yeah.
they are going to fight like animals. They are going to fight like animals. And maybe one goal is the difference. Maybe one goal is the difference. Right now, are you confident, Kunal, next season that we can start seeing games off? We can with one goal, maybe we can hold on and see games off. Because if we don't do that, as you know, Kunal, many seasons that we've seen, and this season itself with Liverpool, defense wins you titles.
Yeah.
Defense wins you titles.
Absolutely.
Attack obviously wins you games, but defense wins you titles, right? There's two distinction here. One wins you games, the other one wins you titles. So what's your thoughts around our sort of perception next season?
I think to begin off, the expectations for next season should definitely be first four. Let's put that out of the way. Should definitely be top four. We need to get
Mm,
there. This is the place where board gets to do what it has to do. The past history of Chelsea and its signings have been so, I would say, because we have had a few blunders, to be very honest. And when it comes to defensive signings, not too many hits, I would say, in the past few years. We have just gone
mm,
on to buy serviceable players. Zuma is a serviceable player, I believe. He's good on his day, but I don't think being on that level, title winning level.
mm,
Same goes with Rudiger. He was there before, I think, played for Roma as well for a few period of time. It was good enough. And defensive signings, they're not that stylish. And we Chelsea fans have been spoiled for choices. Defensives, people, they sell for cheap bucks comparatively, and they don't sound that shining. They don't seem that shining. Or it's for me, defense has to be the first priority in my opinion. And this is
Yeah.
again where I go to my last point with Aspilicueta. He is edging out. and left back we virtually play with a makeshift left back every single game, no matter who plays there, no matter
Yeah.
who plays there. So defensive signings have to definitely take the front seat, in my opinion. And I'm not too much of a stat guy, and this is where I found something quite interesting. We have
Yeah.
a guy from our youth setup, and he's playing in the championship for Swansea, I believe, Mark Guhi, and I'm
Mm.
definitely butchering the name, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Mark,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'll just call him Mark, and we have Mark. We have, yeah. So he's at Swansea for the year, and I'm not too much of a stat guy, but something that caught my attention was, for starters, he's averaging above 4 tackles and interceptions. And when
Mm.
compared to someone like, say, Rudiger, the linchpin of this team, he's averaging around 2. Mark, on the other hand, as well, he is averaging more than 7 clearances, around 7 clearances per game. 7 goal-threatening opportunities is preventing them in each and every game,
Mm.
and that is way way above than anyone else in the squad that we have right now. So I think Lampard, along with one world-class signing, in my opinion, is definitely needed in the centre back position. And
Agreed.
I think we need to. Uh, s- I like Zuma. I think he can be good on his day, and he's a beast. He wins headers most often, but looks clumsy, and I don't see him to be
Yeah.
a perfect fit for a possession-based side. A side that is going to play that fancy old tiki taka or whatever, which Lampard definitely wants to play the possession game. And Rudiger, he's hot and cold. I don't Hot and cold players don't win you the trophies. You
Mm.
know, a player that I remember is Hatim Ben Arfa. So pleasing to watch, but he was
Yeah.
so hot and cold, so couldn't really forge a legendary sort of career.
Mm.
So Zuma for me is something like he's the Ben Arfa of defenders. On some days you'd be like, oh my gosh, that was world class, mate. How did you do that? And the
Mm.
other games you were like, my God, I think I think I think the academy players need to get chance ahead of you. So you cannot have inconsistency for a title-winning team. Rudiger also is a very hot and cold player. They both together, I'm pretty sure, will sell for decent enough money. They are relatively young. They are quite experienced in the PL games. So I think we can safely assume to be around 70, 80 million we can fetch for both of them combined. And
Mm.
that price these days should get you more than decent enough replacement. I think in that regard, Koulibaly, guys like Skriniar, guys like Romagnoli is what I believe. Even Ruben Neves is decent. Ruben Neves, no, Ruben Diaz, sorry.
Ruben Diaz. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
yeah, obviously it can be erased from some other small league, but we have seen so many players make it into the Premier League. Who knew Robin and other guys? They came from Eredivisie. So
Mm.
centre back replacements is a must, followed by full back replacement. And if the Kepa situation continues to go the way it is, and don't feel quite confident about him, then we need a goalkeeper as well. So there you have 3 signings in the defensive department as it is. And we can all talk about we need these guys. Major signings, they take time.
Yeah.
Major signings, they take time. So
Yeah.
we have 3 to 4 replacement as it is that we need to make in the defensive phase. And then on top of that, we have guys like, suppose that we are interested in Sancho and other, attack-minded guys to come through in our academy itself. Major defense needs to be the priority. And if top four has to be the priority for me, then defensive signings, defensive reinforcements have to also take the front seat, because as mentioned very early, we are creating chances. I think that will come more and more with further team harmony and playing together. Guys will again get to know each other, get to know the system a little bit better. Another preseason will surely help. Guys like Ziyech will further add to the creativity, and I'm sure we're going to make at least one more signing in the form of striker. I'm quite confident in that regard. So attack should take care of itself in the next season. If we need top four, I think 3 major signings in the defensive departments is
Yeah.
an absolute must, and that is my major
Splendid.
thing.
Splendid.
Nice, nice. Sonia, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well as signing top players, you also the manager needs to learn from his mistakes. We could
Sure.
see it
Yes.
was very evident. You could see at Real Madrid, you see the difference. Real Madrid had the same players pre Zidane. You could see the
Mm.
difference. Barcelona has you could see what's happening. Valverde had Messi of all players, but Barcelona looked almost unrecognizable this during the first half of this season. So you could have
Yeah.
all the players you want, but if you do not learn from your mistake, you're just going to have recurring and
Yeah.
repetitive situations. Very important. The manager does learn from his mistakes.
I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah.
spot on, Sono, and yeah, good points as well, Kunal. I think this season, if we take it as this is the learning curve, season, we are learning this season. Then next season we shouldn't see, one of the things that we struggled this season was, unlocking the low block teams. When they come to
Oh,
Stamford Bridge, they sit deep
December.
and they defend well, and they
Yeah.
always seem to have at least one or two opportunities, and they take it
Yeah.
and they win the match. So,
Yeah.
this issue cannot be an issue next season. It simply cannot.
No,
We should
absolutely not.
know how to break those teams, and we should be able to put those games away.
Yes.
But having said that, as both of you guys very nicely put that, we can score as many goals as we want, but if we are not defensively solid at the back, and we've not learnt our lesson, well,
Yeah. Kabosh.
we can just throw
Yeah.
everything in the bin.
Case in
Everything
point, the
can be.
Sheffield game. Case in point, the
Yeah,
Sheffield
exactly.
game. We were leading by 2-0, and the defense, oh my God, that was such a funny goal to concede. And
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
again another point with Chelsea. This season, and for as long as I've been watching Chelsea, this season I can recall the most number of comical goals. Chelsea is not. You have to earn your goals against Chelsea historically at least.
Mm,
Yes.
And
mm,
this season, Kappa getting nutmeg, Kappa getting a hit in the face. No, I'm not blaming him, but like Zuma scoring an own goal against Sheffield, that was in the last minute or so. These are,
mm,
you want to hide your face in shame, the sort of goals that we
mm.
concede. So I don't know, that is again something again that comes from lack of cooperation and a lack of leader as well. Who will set up the team. So defensive
Splendid.
Absolutely.
leader such as a Koulibaly is a must. Someone in that vein, someone like a
Yeah.
Koulibaly for the next season will help us surely get
Yeah.
that top four.
Splendid.
Iram's just mentioned a very nice comment as well. He said, "Remember that Everton goal when Zuma went brain dead." So true. I still remember that, and that was, oh my god, that goal gives me nightmares. That pass from Kepa, and then Zuma's just looking, oh, who'd you pass to? And then,
Amateurish. Amateur.
oh my god, just let's not talk about that. It gives me
Yeah.
nightmares.
Yeah. I gotta sleep,
Fantastically
man.
said, boys. Fantastically
sleep.
said, boys. I think we all agree next season. I think the concept that I get out of here is that what we are trying to say is we need to learn from our issues this season so that they don't become issues next season. And that's the number one thing. I think, whether we get top four and make sure we should always be consistent in Champions League. We should always be there. We should be challenging for titles. But I think most importantly, what we both want to see is that similar mistakes cannot be tolerated. Similar mistakes cannot be tolerated.
Absolutely.
Now,
Hallmark of
moving
coach.
exactly. Moving on to the final piece of our segment today, and we won't take too much of this time. I think we've covered a lot of these topics within this. Now, I want to talk about the build-up against Spurs. I'll quickly touch base with you, Sono, and Kunal as well, in terms of the kind of formation and the players that you want to see, and your expectation in the game. If we lose, what's the consequences? And if we win and whatnot, what's the consequences? So I'll start with, once again, Sono. We've beaten Spurs once this season with the 3-4-3, formation
At Wembley Stadium, right?
At Wembley
Yeah.
Stadium. I still think personally, right now with the players that we have, 3-4-3 is probably, I feel like, is the right sort of combination. I'll take your point as well. For me, I need to start seeing more defensive cohesion. I need to start seeing more clean sheets. Honestly, I do not care about whether how many goals we can score. We can't even score goals at the moment, but it simply hurts me that we can't defend and we can't keep a clean sheet. Now, what is going to be your Frank Lampard? You're setting your team up. What's your formation? Who's starting? How you're playing Spurs? And what's the repercussion if we lose or even if we draw, or if we win? What's your thoughts?
First of all, I think first of all, I would like to start with the consequence of not winning the game tomorrow. Tomorrow, we
Mm.
are just 5 points above Everton in ninth place. If I'm
Wow.
people tend to not realize that. So if we
Mm.
lose tomorrow, so we just have that's 2 games. So 6 points, 6 minus 5, that's one. So if
Mm.
our next game after Spurs, I can't recall what is another difficult game after Spurs.
After Spurs is the Bayern Munich game, and then after that, Premier League. I don't think it's a difficult one, but it's one of those low block
So
teams. So
with Chelsea
it's
right
gonna
now,
everything is
every game is
difficult.
every game is
Everything is
difficult
difficult.
right now.
Yeah.
You just don't know what to expect, especially and ironically, every game played in Stamford Bridge seems to get worried right now. It seems to be the case
Mm.
right now. I'm more at ease playing away than coming to
Yeah.
Stamford Bridge. I'm not sure if that should be the case. This used to be the fortress. And by the way, so
Yeah.
I'm just 26 minutes away from Stamford Bridge from here. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. It's ridiculous. Tomorrow, it's a must win. It's definitely a must win now. We are at that stage right now. Arsenal are beginning to come into momentum right now, pick up momentum.
Mm.
Sheffield United are relentless.
Mm.
Wolf has been Wolf. Tottenham, if we lose to Tottenham tomorrow, forget it. And
They go above.
one thing I can assure you, if Mourinho goes above you, that man would defend the entire season. That's it. That's it.
Mm.
Mourinho is
Mm.
a man. If he gets to a place, it's difficult to bring him down. It's very difficult.
Mourinho was 14th when he took over. Tottenham were 14th. They are a point behind us now.
More
Well,
about everyone being shambolic equally.
so
You know.
it means don't that drive you crazy when you think about it? And people
Uh,
keep saying that we're still fourth. We're still. Remember, I was tweeting me. I was like, reality is going to set in very soon because everyone's like, at least we're still fourth. No one was looking at the performance. They were just looking at the results. But
yeah.
the performance tells you that that it is inevitable that if we continue in this manner, we are likely to drop points. People always kept saying
Mm.
we're still fourth. Now, going back to the question,
Mm.
what's going to be the consequence of losing the game tomorrow? The consequence is that if we lose tomorrow, it means right now that we are fighting to win our next game and dropping points in the following game. There is a chance that we might now be fighting to stay in Europa and in the Europa League position because Everton
Mm.
is in ninth
Quite
place,
possible.
Mm.
5 points away from us, and we're not
Mm.
guaranteed of winning. We're not guaranteed about winning our next game if we lose this one. So we're talking
Mm.
about facing the possibility of being in 10th place.
Wow.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not talking about fourth right now. We're talking about the possibility of going down all the way to 10th in the league right now. So that's the consequences we're looking at right now. Now, in terms of team selection, to be very candid right now, I don't even know who to trust anymore in this team. That's how bad it is.
Mm.
I don't know. You recall we were talking about Emerson Alonso, and it turns out that both of them are
Mm.
equivalently
Yeah. I
inefficient.
put a,
Oh, yeah.
I put a thing yesterday. I said like just because with Emerson, in case of Emerson and Alonso, so we were so fed up with Alonso, we were suddenly like Emerson is the second coming of Roberto Carlos. Those trending hashtag, justice for Emerson,
Yeah.
Emerson, justice for Emerson. Both are quite underwhelming. And Emerson, he had a few run of games where he was quite promising at the start, but everybody else, each and every player, including Kepa, was doing
Yeah,
bits at the start.
yeah.
So when the chips are down, that's where the elite players, come to the fore. They come to the surface.
Yeah.
Emerson, he has looked worse than Alonso, and that is a big accomplishment, if you can call it that.
But
So
Kuna,
absolutely,
Is it me though? But Alonso tend to step up his game when playing against Tottenham. Is it me
yeah.
or just have you noticed it? I don't know. Alonso, well, every time
Yeah, he
Alonso
seems to
plays
bring it up.
against
Yeah,
Tottenham, is a different
Even
player.
William, yeah,
Yeah, even
even
Williams.
William.
So on that note, I think Alonso, there are certain players. If you look through the history of football, there are certain players that just love playing against certain
Yeah,
teams. I
Yeah.
recall
wake up,
Tevez. Every time we played against Man City or Man United, I know Tevez is going to score.
Yeah.
You just know,
Drogba
you
and
know
Arsenal
Tevez
every
is
time.
going to score. It's like Drogba, Arsenal. It's
Yeah.
almost like Rooney versus Arsenal. It's same. So I would say Alonso. I'll get Alonso because he knows how to play against Tottenham.
Yeah,
Yeah. So in if in my team, if I was Lampard, my team selection it may not be entirely correct, but to other people, but in my opinion, my humble opinion, I will go back to Kepa because I would have to, Kepa, um, right back. Because I can see Mourinho playing defensively right now. So,
Mm.
right back, I'm not sure because is it crazy if I play if have you ever thought about playing James in the DM role?
It's not crazy,
quite
man.
possible. I think it's his
We've talked
future. It's
about,
written in his future. Yeah, I think.
yeah, we've there's been a lot of talk about this. I've recently talked to Matisse and Alex and Chris in their podcast where Matisse brought up this because I was talking about how Jorginho. I don't always feel comfortable with Jorginho,
Yeah,
and the ideology of Reece James. And this is why I said, boys, that in recent times when I saw Tariq Lamptey being given away to Brighton,
yeah,
I was a bit upset. I was really upset because I felt Reece James should not just be penciled as a right back. I
yeah,
feel Reece James's game is so good that he can play almost anywhere. Almost
yeah,
anywhere. I feel like he can play right back. I think he can play defensive midfield. I even
yeah,
think he may even be able to play centre back. He could even probably play wing.
yeah,
He can play anywhere. So
Attacking
that's why I
midfield as
thought,
well,
yeah, and that's why I thought
as a
someone like Tariq Lamptey,
passing
you
vigilance.
know,
yeah.
could be a right back situation down the track, and someone like Reece James can be defensive midfield. So yeah, Sono, continue, man.
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
it's a bad call.
yeah. I would say, I would continue with Ashby on the right back, Reece James on the DM right there. We have
Mm.
no choice right now. I believe Christensen is having this concussion issue. I wouldn't even want to rush him back. But I would say we have no choice now to stick with Rudiger and Zuma in the game. Um, it's we don't have Hudson Odoi, and we haven't got Pulisic, so we don't even have options anymore at all. And this is why it really pains me losing Moses, as much as hopeless as he can be. Uh, um, 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 with his delivery, but he's also a player, can actually take on players and create space. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So, yeah, so we don't really have options to select. The only options we've got are from the defense going forward. We only have William and Pedro to rely on right now because our optional players, our main players like CHO, Pulisic is out. So
Mm.
if I should just lay it claim, so we're talking about Kepa, we're talking about Aspilicueta, Rudiger, and Zuma, and I would even go with Tomori on the left back. And I
Mm.
know it sounds ridiculous, but I would go with Tomori on the left back because Aspilicueta is not even really functional in the left back, to be very candid.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I will go with James, Reece James, and Kovacic, in they're playing. Kovacic is playing ahead of Reece James, and
Mm.
interchanging right now. And we have Mount. Barkley should go back to Millwall to play for Millwall because I'm really done with Barkley. I'm really done with him. That's how bad it is. Yeah.
Uh,
And then we have Mount and Willian, and then you have Giroud for me personally. And
mm.
having Reece James, it's going to ensure he's solid and he can also make those telling passes you expect of Jorginho as well. So that's
Mm.
why he can screen. I actually saw a few highlights of him playing for Wigan, and I was like, this
Yes.
he absolutely he. I think Kuna, you're actually right. Reece James, he's been limited, asking to play. Being when you say he's a right back, he's more than a right back. Reece
Yes.
James
Yeah,
is more than a right back. He's
absolutely.
really, really great. So that's what I would do. That's my lineup really for me. I wouldn't mind going 4-3 or even a. I can't see a diamond shooting Giroud. So it's not, and I can't
Mm.
see Lampard. I don't think Lampard is tactically astute enough to go to use the diamond formation at all.
Mm.
So I would say the usual formation, which is 4-3-3 or 4-4-2, but it wouldn't work with Giroud 4-4. Apparently 4-4-2 would suit Giroud,
Mm.
because and Giroud is a player who's got technique, so he
Yeah.
can play with
Yeah, hold
with
the
another
ball.
front
Yeah,
man. Absolutely.
France plays like that, where he acts like the hold up, and he allows Mbappe to just create
Ab-
that's
havoc.
his
ab-
old game in French squad. Yeah,
Absolutely. But if we are going to go route one, so we have to go with the 4-3-3. Which if
Mm.
we want to
Mm.
go route one, yeah, yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah.
Kunal, man, what's your thoughts on your formation, your lineup? Can you really see Giroud starting? Because I feel like Frank's got something
Lampard.
against him. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. So I'll quickly go through my preferred lineup, to
Yeah.
save the embarrassment of, sleeping, passing out on my chair. So I'll quickly go through it.
Yeah.
Mourinho was embarrassed by his pupil in the last meeting.
Mm.
So, and we all know one thing about Mourinho, he has that ego, right?
Mm.
I think he's gonna go gun ho, as they call it. I think he
Yeah.
wants to, tell to the
Take us
world
by
he's still
surprise.
there, he's still
Yeah.
the guy. Lampard is still the pupil, he's still the master, and all those sort of things. I think he's going to go with that freestyle, the Tottenham style of play that was under the previous manager. I hate them so much, I couldn't watch Pochettino. So,
Mm.
yeah, such a good manager, and I cannot, bother to recall his name. So, Mourinho is going to play the typical, Tottenham style, is what I feel. Let them do their bit, and Deli Ali is going to be the key player for him, is what I feel. He might be the danger man. And
Yeah.
Mm.
given that, and given the defensive abilities or the lack thereof that has been shown in this season, I think 3-4-3 is the safest bet. I think it's not. It's all about not losing 1 point, and I think we can go with that. We can move forward with that. 1 point, scam the other side with a goal, scam the opposition with a goal. That'd be great. Nick a goal. Having said that, 3-4-3 would be my preferred lineup. I'll go with Kepa because, well, what the hell, Kepa? Okay, we don't have Rob Green, I suppose, right? So yeah, Kepa. I think.
If you guys just excuse me for a minute, please. Just
Sure,
when
sure,
I'll
Yeah.
be
sure,
back in it. Yeah, thank you.
sure. Yeah, go on, Kunal.
So yeah, sure. So I think I'll also go with Kepa because I have to. The three centre back pairing. Again, I will not rush Christensen. Zuma, Rudiger, and Tomori would be good enough in that regard. The 3-4-3 or the 5-2-3, it's one and the same thing. So my wing backs for that would be Aspilicueta and Reece James. Aspilicueta in his left wing back position, and I will definitely have Alonso make an appearance. That Tottenham voodoo or whatever he seems to
Mm.
have on them. So definitely in the second half, especially if we are still drawing the game or need a goal, my next 45 minutes would definitely see Alonso making an appearance. But I'd start with these three centre backs, Reece James and Aspilicueta. My two midfielder, mm, I don't think that Barkley is given his due credit for the things that he's actually good at. He's actually good at very limited sort of things, but I think he's a workhorse sort of midfielder, a Jordan Henderson type of midfielder, if you like. Not
Mm.
particularly world class in any sort of thing, but he'll give it all. He has that, he has that mentality. Should I say, he has that strong mentality. Ross Barkley, he's well built. He's built like RLC.
Mm.
So I don't know why he doesn't make use of it. For me, the pivot would be Kovacic and Barkley. Barkley needs to because as I said, my whole point is to prevent a loss at any cost. And Jorginho, I don't see him being that defensive shield because he's not that sort of player. Barkley needs to perform that role to stay with the defense, and he can pass the ball. He's quite strong. He can progress the ball, so should help in that regard. Kovacic is an absolute must because I've set up so yeah. Welcome back.
Thank you,
So
thank you. Sorry about
I've
that.
set
Sorry
the
about
teams.
that.
So yeah, I'll quickly go through again.
Yeah,
I'll go with the 3-4-3 formation with
yeah,
Tomori, Rudiger, and Zuma as my three centre back pairings because of course. And my other two wing backs would be at the beginning would be Reece James at right side and Aspilicueta at the left. But
yeah,
I will, no matter what, will definitely see Alonso in unless we are leading by a few goals. I'll
yeah.
definitely have Alonso make an appearance, especially if we are drawing or losing.
Mm,
And then my two pivot in the midfield pairing, as outlandish as it might sound, would be Barkley and Kovacic. Barkley
mm.
is a workhorse type of midfielder. You know, he's good at this sort of thing where he'll just sprint for 90 odd minutes and do that Jordan Henderson type of role. He can pass the ball relatively okay. I don't think he's that bad in that regard. He'll pass the ball. He's not creative, but he'll pass the ball. And with that, seven players and Kepa, of course, eight players out of the way. My front three, out of necessity, would have to be Mount on the left side, Willian on the right side, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
Giroud. Giroud, I think, once again, Batshuayi, his last game, I have been sticking for him for quite a while now. I even called him better than Morata
yeah.
in quite a few of my tweets, and people will sending me back those screenshots after the last game, and I don't blame them. I don't know how they find these sorts of things, and why do they keep it in mind? Twitter is a silly place. People say lots of things. People say lots of things. Yeah. So Giroud, I think the time is up for Batshuayi. So and there's no way Tammy is coming back. So why not Giroud? He's a World Cup winner for God's sake. He knows what it's like. He has been there, done that. So Batshuayi, I think he has had his game. Lampard would definitely think that if as soon as Tammy comes back, Giroud will be the starter, and that is my preferred starting lineup. I think the goal is to not lose at any cost, and then we can still manage the hopes for top four.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good point, man. I think that pretty much sums it up, boys. That
yeah,
tomorrow,
Yeah,
it's just we can't lose. We simply cannot lose.
yeah, that's the main
If
thing. Yeah,
if we lose, I think as Sono and
I
you guys
agree.
have quite rightly put, the consequences is just going to be devastating. Teams
yeah,
like Sheffield United are only a few points away. Tottenham will go in front. Everton's closing the gap. Arsenal's
yeah,
on the run as well. We could seriously start seeing ourselves drop all the way from fourth, as Sono was saying.
Uh,
Immediately to the 10th in no
I
time.
definitely,
Um,
definitely cannot afford to see McBurney running down the wing at camp now next season.
so, so yeah, I think.
That'd be waste of my Saturday. That'd be waste of my Saturday.
So yeah, it's very important that we get the win. Hopefully we can that can kickstart
yeah,
a good end to the season.
yeah,
And we can really think about rebuilding over the off season and focus on correcting some of our issues.
yeah.
So that being said, boys, thank you so much. We've covered some
No,
really interesting topics. Any final thoughts before we go? Let you shine. First of all, Sona, and then Kunal.
yeah. I just one final thought on the coaching crew. What do you have any when you look at the coaching crew and see how fresh they are in terms of in the business? What do you think? What do you make of it? And the effect on the effect on the squad, the players itself. Having a
Personally,
yeah, having an
yeah, go on.
having an inexperienced coaching crew
Mm.
and an inexperienced squad juxtaposed with an inadequate quality in terms of the experienced players. Yeah,
Personally, I think, as you said, Frank being inexperienced,
yeah,
which fine, we've given him the chance. Fantastic. The
yeah,
man is trying. He is trying.
yeah,
But I
absolutely.
think his assistant coaches, in the likes of Jody and all the other, and this is no disrespect to these people.
Yeah,
I feel like these are not for a club like Chelsea,
Yeah.
I don't think these are the right type of people for Frank at the moment. He really needs some experience. Now, there's a lot of talk that his backroom stuff has a lot of experience in X, Y, and Z and whatnot. Many have been part of Chelsea for a very, very long time, but I feel this is a very strong point, Sono, that Jody, I'm not really sure, provides him and Jody together just makes it very, very even more inexperienced. Like it's already inexperienced. It just makes it even more. You need. I feel like you need someone a little bit more
Yeah.
experience with Frank who can sort of help him out
Yeah.
with certain things. Most specifically the defensive issues. For me, you're spot on, and that's how I would respond to that.
Splendid. Yeah.
Mm.
That's good answer. Great. Yeah.
Brilliant. Kunal, any last things that you want to say before you leave?
Yeah, just one thing that for the past few days I've started to see these trends that Lampard is, people are, starting to get a little bit restless. At the beginning of the season, I quite remember everyone, each and every person, including the hardcore Chelsea fans, they knew what the situation was going to be. And all of a sudden, just because we have that dream start, all of a sudden Lampard doesn't know what he's doing. Lampard is making, of course, he has been doing making mistakes, but guess what? A new manager at such a big club is still doing relatively well. He's still at fourth for all those mistakes that he's committing. We're still in
Mm,
the fourth position. I've started to see that people, are getting on his back far too much. Criticism is relevant, and I think it's acceptable.
When
But
it's
these sort
constructive.
of
mm,
stupid sort of comments like Lampard out, and sometimes I feel they're not even joking anymore. They're not trolling. This seriously think that Lampard has somehow damaged the club from its core. I think
mm,
people need to be reasonable with him as well. And he has not made any signing, as we all
mm,
know, and he's trying to implement a system that is far away from Chelsea's DNA. He's trying to build a system that is similar to the way that Nagelsmann plays at RB Leipzig. There
mm,
are similarities. There are similarities. So I think people need to be reasonable. Is what I want. This is a sort of a message that I want to put across. I think you Lampard is the guy that has given me the most cherishable memories as a Chelsea fan. And I just don't think that 8 months or 7 months or whatever it has been should be the reason for people to, discard everything. And even when he has not been given backing from the club due to the ban and then their incompetency, I think people
mm,
need to just chill out a little bit. I think they need to be reasonable. I think they need to sit and see the season in its entirety to come to a conclusion. And after that, even if Lampard makes a signing, even if he implements a system, and then still the results don't show, then of course, a man who can be a very good player, history shows that very rarely goes on to be the coach that the team needs
Yeah.
when he
Yeah.
gets there in future. So history is against him. And if we know anything about Lampard, he has been doing this. He has been proving people wrong all his life, and I
True.
believe in him. And I think people should as well.
Yeah.
good point, man. I think
Great.
you're right. I've never been an advocate of someone who chopping and changing managers. We need some sort of stability. We need to
Yeah.
give someone a bit of a
Sure,
chance and to
definitely.
rectify the situation. He's obviously learning this season, and hopefully next season that he can start rectifying some of these issues. As I always said, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for progress.
Yeah.
So hopefully we start seeing progress. Boys, thank you so much for joining
Thank you
me.
for having us.
It's,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
thank you so much to come to this channel and the other side of the coin. Had absolute blast with you guys. And to all my viewers that will get the chance to see later on, please follow Sono and Kunal. You're going to get a very, very good intellectual sort of take on the game and very, very respectful
Yes.
individuals as well. So until next time, everyone, see ya.
Thank you very much for having us. Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.